From the land of conjurers, flying through the internet to your device like a UAP, hauntingly unexplained and downright weird, this is the Witching Hours, and we are ready to take off in the flash of an eye. Good evening to one and all, wherever and whenever you are listening to this program. I am Johnny the Frost, and joining me, as always, is the medium Jenny Lee. How are you doing, Jenny?
I think I'm okay.
You think you're okay?
Yeah, I think I'm okay. It's been a weird day, but other than that, doing just fine.
Yeah, it's been, well, we're getting into the throes of summer. It's been hot
It's the
and
first day of summer. It's the
yeah,
summer solstice.
yeah. So I've been enjoying. I've been getting a lot more sunlight and being outdoors, which has been nice. Um, but man, it's getting pretty warm out there. Yeah, in
Yeah,
our area. So
this weekend is supposed to be toasty.
yeah, we're supposed to get pretty close to 100 this weekend. So we'll see how
Nice.
we'll talk this weekend, and we'll let you know how it's going.
Have all the blinds closed, and the air
Pump that
conditioner
AC up,
blowing.
and
Yes.
yeah, we'll be.
Feel like we're in Texas all over again.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, are you ready to get into some news?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. There's been some big stories this week, and one thing about doing this show just once a week, which we were just talking about guests tonight
Yeah.
about, and we're really looking forward to the show tonight. Um, is sometimes some news stuff pops off like after Thursday, and I have to wait a whole week to get to it. And
Is
this
that what
has been
happened
kind
last
of one of
week?
those things where I get a little upset because mainstream news media starts talking about these things before tinfoil hat guy gets a chance to talk about it.
Maybe that's their Friday news.
There we go. So the first one is alien megastructures. So
I
the
saw
news is
this, but I didn't really look at it, so I'm
yeah.
interested.
So the news has been awash with a study that finds that potential alien megastructures around stars, also known as Dyson spheres, which we've talked about plenty of times on this show. Dr. Jana Levin joined NBC News to discuss the findings that they're doing in infrared, looking at these stars in infrared, and basically they're not giving off light.
Hmm.
And she mentioned, or at least a much more dimmer amount of light than they would expect from that star. And she mentioned that they could possibly find natural reasons for this occurring, but
Yeah.
many scientists are proposing that we could be, in fact, finding Dyson spheres around suns. Just if you're not familiar with that concept, just think of
I'm
like
not.
how we put solar panels on roofs and stuff.
Yeah.
If you were to basically encompass a star with solar panels and be able to draw all the energy of that star
Mm.
into an energy source.
And
Um,
it's made by the vacuum cleaner guys?
yeah, yeah. Well, he was. It's named after a scientist, which
Okay.
it's
'Cause
important
that's
to
all
note
I can
that
think of when you say it. It's the vacuum cleaners.
eh,
They
one of
make
the
some good
really interesting,
vacuums.
yeah, one of the really interesting things about this is, of course, there's natural reasons this could be happening, but they're only these images that they have of multiple stars that they think could possibly have something alien like a Dyson sphere. They're only looking 1,000 light years away, which Dr. Jana Levin mentioned it was basically in our backyard. Like
That's not
these
that
are
far.
all
Yeah.
stars that are very, very, very close to us, and
Mhm.
then we're already finding multiple kind of anomalies
Neat.
dealing with these stars. So that's been in the news. That's a big one. And there was another huge story this week. Aliens might be living among us disguised as humans, claims
I
a
think I
Harvard
know a
study.
few.
Yeah, there you know a couple.
I swear I saw a dude at the Washington, D.C. Zoo one time, and I could not stop looking at him, and he was not I don't think he was human. But
Lizard
that's just me.
people.
Lizard people. Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
Aliens might be living among us disguised as humans, claims a Harvard study. A recent Harvard study has revealed that aliens might be living among us, probably underground or on the moon. The human flourishing,
Or at the DC Zoo.
or at the DC Zoo. The Human Flourishing Program of Harvard University also stated that UFOs might be alien spaceships and are
What? Really?
visiting to meet their alien friends living on Earth.
It took a
Uh,
Harvard study to figure that one out.
yeah, the research paper mentions that the unidentified anomalous phenomena, more commonly referred to as UFOs, and extraterrestrial beings could be living underground on the moon or even walking among humans. Um,
DC Zoo.
and then the story goes on to list like 4 different types, specifically in this paper.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um, the paper by researcher, which we talked about, the part of the school that they're a part of, the author became increasingly aware of the depth of evidence and theory that also tentatively supports another extraterrestrial explanation, the crypto-terrestrial, or focus here, which holds the UAP, may reflect activities of NHIs being concealed on Earth. So the study claims that crypto-terrestrials can come in 4 different forms: human crypto-terrestrials, technologically advanced ancient human civilization that was largely destroyed long ago,
Mhm.
but continued to exist in remnant form.
Mhm.
Hominid or theropod crypto-terrestrials, a technologically advanced non-human civilization consisting of some terrestrial animal which evolved to live in stealth. These could be
Mhm.
like hominid descendant or descendants of unknown intelligent dinosaurs.
Oh, I thought they were talking about Bigfoot.
I mean, I guess that could be there.
Are they talking about they're talking about the lizard people?
Former extraterrestrial are extraterrestrial crypto-terrestrials. These beings could have arrived on Earth from elsewhere in the cosmos or from the human future and concealed themselves in stealth, such as the moon.
Mm.
And
Mm.
magical crypto-terrestrials, entities that are less like homegrown aliens and more like earthbound angels. These beings relate to the human world in ways that are less technological and more magical, such as fairies, elves, and nymphs.
Oh, and
And
this is a Harvard paper, huh?
the yeah, I mean,
Lizard
what a time,
people and fairies.
what a time to be alive, right? Where, the paranormal show,
Yeah,
podcast
yeah, yeah.
is, trying to read this stuff off Harvard studies. So
Mm,
there you go.
very interesting.
There you go.
So
Yeah,
woo is normal. Yeah.
woo-woo is normal again.
Yes. Weirdness is the new normal.
Study, study, story number 3 tonight is a continuation of something I've been keeping everyone abreast of here.
It's not the
Na
plastics, is it?
No.
Okay.
NASA's Voyager has made a full recovery after the glitch nearly ended the historic mission.
Oh,
So,
good. Yay. Yeah.
the iconic mission has resumed regular science operations for the first time since November 2023. The 46-year-old spacecraft is once again probing interstellar space for cosmic wonders following a 7-month-long hiatus. Essentially, there's a faulty chip in it,
Yeah.
and they were able to do an upload, which took part
Yay.
of another part of Voyager and put the information that it was using that chip for. So it is completely, Voyager is completely functional again.
That's wonderful.
And then finally, this was a discussion that was going on in our Discord. So if you aren't following along on our Discord, you can go to YouTube and places online and find our links to get into our community to talk about these wonderful things. Uh, a mystery monolith appears in the Nevada desert.
Oh, yeah.
These have been popping up. These silver monoliths have been popping up all over the world. They started during the pandemic in 2020. And now there is a new one in the Nevada desert. The monolith is similar to the other puzzling ones that appeared around the globe in 2020. Tall, rectangular, reflective structure. This one was spotted near Gas Peak, a hiking area in Nevada desert, just an hour north of Las Vegas. In pictures released by police on social media, the monolith appeared to be nestled in a slightly rugged terrain. And the Las Vegas police posted with a caption, "How did it get up there?"
Hmm.
So this has been interesting. I mentioned in Discord, you know, that I think there's a high likelihood that these are, I don't know if they're hoaxes, but that they're being put up. There was a correlation with these going up in the lockdown.
Yeah.
People had time on their hands.
Yeah.
But it is interesting nonetheless. And
Mhm.
I don't know. That's just a guess. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on where these things keep popping up at. I know that some are talking in there about maybe trying to figure out where all these popped up at, and are they connected with any kind of ley lines or
Yeah.
the significance possibly of where these are being seen. But yeah, another one has popped up, and we just talked about one a few weeks ago on the show. So they keep coming, and that was the news.
Yay.
Yay.
Interesting stuff. Good stories this week.
Yes. All right. I'm excited to get to tonight's guest, and I know that
Yes.
I think you guys are going to be super excited to get into this conversation tonight too. Also, John Koenig is a board certified hypnotist and past life facilitator practicing in Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts. He was awarded the Order of Bryad by the National Guide of Hypnotists in 2022 for lifetime achievement in his field. John is the co-author of The Hypnotic Coach and author of My Autobiographies: An Introduction to Past Life Exploration for Personal and Spiritual Growth, both available on Amazon.com. John recently created an Oracle deck titled The Universal Mind Map Oracle Meditation System, and which was successfully funded on Kickstarter last month and will officially be released in August. I'm sure we can talk about that. Additionally, John is the creator of the HypnoVision video series featured on NBC and ABC National News. He holds a BA in psychology from Hofstra University and an MA in Anglo-Irish Studies from the National University of Ireland. John lives in Barrington, Rhode Island with his wife, Maria, and their cat, Mesmer. Please welcome to the show,
Hi.
John Koenig.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
privilege and an honor.
We are super excited to have you on because we've talked a lot about past lives, as we were discussing a little bit before we went live tonight. We have some experience with past lives, but we haven't really been able to delve into the idea of the past life regressions, hypnotic regressions, and things like that. So I guess we can get started tonight with, what came first for you? The interest in being a board certified hypnotist, and then the past life stuff, or was it the opposite way around for you?
It was, I became a hypnotist first. And frankly, I had very little interest in past life work. But a friend of mine's wife was a facilitator. And I went to her, and suddenly I found myself as an 18th century soldier in the 1st Continental Dragoons, Private Riley. And people respond differently to regression for past life. Some people, it's like they're watching it. Some people get a general sense of it. Some people, frankly, get very, very little. With me, it's like I'm there. And suddenly I was there. And I got to meet Private Riley, who was a very unusual character. He was pretentious. When I first met him, I spoke as him. And I felt my mouth go. I started to say Corporal Riley, but he was only a private. He had a silk shirt like the officers, and he was pretentious. And he's invited to an assignment to bring a message to his captain. So I find myself bringing this message. I feel filled with self-importance. And I go into this large room, and they won't let me see the captain. I'm only a private. The guy at the door takes the message, and I'm shocked that I'm being so disrespected. You get emotions when you do this stuff as well. But I noticed something odd about the room. It looked weird. I couldn't figure out why. Then I realized it was lit by candle. And I've never been in a ballroom lit by candle. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you're doing this work. You see things that don't make sense at first, but if you stay with them, you can get a feel for what they really mean. So anyway, poor Private Riley, allegedly John is Private Riley, he goes back and he goes to a pub and he's miserable and he's been disrespected and he was told to give it to the captain. He failed in his mission, and I die at that point. And I experienced my consciousness going up through, it was in a pub, up through the roof of the pub. And this caught my attention. I had no idea what to expect. And I got this and I said, I've got to find out more about this. But I was a general practitioner, smoking, stress, weight loss, sports, pre-surgery. I worked in oncology with cancer patients. So I wasn't about to let the medical community in Rhode Island know that that I am who I am. So I did it on the down low.
Yeah.
The clients asked me, and I probably did about 20 past life regressions with clients. All the while I was aggressively seeking out my own experiences and, for personal growth and curiosity. So that's how I got into it. But then I am now, this incarnation, I don't want to be morbid about it, but nobody gets out of this thing alive. And I'm 75 years old. I'm 75 years old. I haven't got too many more turns around, the course. So I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And I published my book, my autobiographies, where I relate about, I think about 14 of them.
Wow.
And I've in total, I haven't counted up, but it's probably around 24 experiences of various sorts. It's a bit of a passion. So that's my story in a nutshell. Me, in this case, being the nut.
How did that life end in the pub? Like right then, what happened to him?
I don't know. He
sure.
either died from like an aneurysm or something, or else it was violence. It was sudden.
Yeah.
And one of the things about past life work is I always take clients to the end of the life. Every life, in my experience, has a central theme or two. And in Private Riley's life, it was pretension. And out of that, I got in touch with my own pretension, what that I carried into this life. And that's what's available to people. Part of what's available to people in past life work is to get insights into who you are, where it came from.
Absolutely.
And I know you've done one, Jenny. You've done some yourself, right?
Yes, I've done. Me and Frosty together have done some group meditations, and then I do
experiences.
Yes, I facilitate kind of a group meditative practice myself. Of course, I'm not a hypnotist, and I'm not certified to be a hypnotist, but we do it through a meditative state and a group setting, and it's fascinating. Every life is like this amazing little story, this little nugget of goodness, even if it's got terrible things in it. It's just it's amazing.
I mentioned when we were talking casually, I know you're in Virginia, and there's a group down there, the Reincarnation Symposium in Richmond. But also, Richmond has, I don't know if you know the Division of Perceptual Studies, University of Richmond or Virginia.
I don't know.
University of Virginia.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. UVA.
It is very, very important in this work.
Yes.
We had a fellow down there called Ian Stevenson. And Ian Stevenson started it. He was a formally trained psychiatrist, academic, scientific, and he became interested in this work. And in the University of Virginia, I think it's University of Virginia, VMA, not VMA,
UVA.
Yeah, he documented before he passed about 2,000, what he calls cases, closed cases. And what he did is he got children, typically under the age of 5, who reported past lives. And he and his team investigated. They went back. They found, the guy said that he had been a butcher in a certain town, and they had lost his finger when he was cutting meat. And they revealed autopsies. They solved or proved, in my opinion. He calls it 20 cases suggestive of reincarnation. But in my experience, my opinion, he proved this is real. And he had a couple of books. One of them, he shows pictures, like birthmarks, where
Oh yeah.
somebody was stabbed as a hunter at one point, and they have a birthmark exactly where the person stabbed. And the thing about his work that I find most compelling is that he worked only with children. Once you're a grown-up, you run the risk of being contaminated. You know, I've
Mhm.
seen lots of movies and read books about the Revolutionary War. You know, so did I make it up? You can't really tell with a grown-up.
Mhm.
With a 5-year-old, you can tell because they had no chance
Mhm.
to be corrupted. And that's why, and his work is still going on. Now, I mentioned this group called the Reincarnation Symposium that takes place in your town in Richmond, near where you are, which is you know, a group. It's a national, international group looking at this work, and it's ongoing. The academic part of it particularly appeals to me. I've got an analytical kind of mind, and Ian Stevenson's work impressed me. My own experiences, I'm not that sure about. You know, did I make it up? Did I you know, read about it somewhere? I don't really know. It felt real.
Mhm.
It's
Absolutely
difficult,
felt real.
John. It really is because, we went in for, like, a group session the first time that we ever did this, and it was in Richmond. Um, and I went in, I guess, as most people would, as a skeptic.
Hmm.
I love the idea of past lives and reincarnation but, to me, I didn't have any proof that anything like that existed. But, the interesting thing is I had almost the exact same feeling that you did. Once I did it, I had some really vivid images, but there's still, and I'll even tell Jenny when we talk about it, it's like, man, like this seems really, really
Hmm.
important, but at the same time, like it could just be things that are firing up in my brain, like your brain is trying almost in a way to create something. But I gotta say that through all of my times doing this, every time it just seems to become a little bit more where I'm like, you know what, I think this is really hitting on something here. Um, and one is like you were talking about with what was going on at UVA is if you can connect a past life regression to something that has some kind of evidence in the real life, and I had one of those, which is I had one where during one of my regressions there where I was like, I don't know what year it was, but it was sometime during like the Middle Ages or maybe around the Renaissance, but it was in Europe, and I was like like a highwayman, and I was killed. When I went to my death, I was killed basically trying to rob somebody on a roadway in the woods. And I told Jenny, I said I got stabbed like right under my arm, like underneath my armpit. And then she was like, "Well, do you know you got a birthmark there?"
Wow.
And
It
I
was
have
just
like
like
a
the
sideways
pictures you were
birthmark
talking
that's
about.
kind
Yeah.
of shaped just like a knife wound would be. And I don't
Yeah.
think about it because I don't see it. You don't
Yeah.
see
You're
Right.
not
underneath
looking at
your
your
own armpit
armpit.
very much. And so you have those little things there that that's hard to kind of dismiss.
It really is. And so I believe, based on the work that Ian Stevenson and his colleagues and successors did, that it's proven. I think that you have to bend over backwards to think this is not the way that it is.
Mm,
Seriously,
Yeah.
people. There's a thing called dismissal prior to investigation. People that don't want to think about this uh, are ignoring the facts of the matter.
Mhm.
Uh, there was a Netflix documentary not too long ago, and there's this kid, and he is a little guy. Suddenly, he's a fireman in his mind. He's like 4 or 5 years old. He's a fireman, and he's a certain type of fireman. He's an emergency kind of guy, a rescue guy, and image after image after. He starts asking his mother about the bad men who knocked down the towers. He's 4 years
Mm,
old. The
mm,
bad men who knocked down the towers with airplanes. And he was able to name names of people in his unit that actually was part of the rescue team at 9/11. He knew the equipment. He knew the procedures. You can look at that and you can choose not to acknowledge it, but
Mhm.
you have to bend over backwards, I think, to deny. This is how it goes. We come back here. I call Earth Spirit School. We come back here to learn.
mm,
We bring a curriculum that we have designed. We choose our parents. We choose our circumstance, our race, our gender, and everything else to learn and also to teach others in our soul families. I'm not going to go so far as to say that the three of us have been connected, but likely. Most people you meet, likely. You have these odd encounters sometimes with somebody, like a momentary encounter where somebody says something that's significant, and who knows? But the part I'll stick with is that I think this has been proven to be the way that it is,
Mhm.
and compatible with whatever religious aspect you have, whatever you want to think about. Uh, we know that what is like 1.5 billion people, their religion has them believe in it. We know that roughly in America, roughly 35% of people in our country believe in reincarnation. But I think that this is not a question of belief, but a question of proof. This is how
mm.
it is.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, John, because we've talked about that a lot on this show about meeting people and you just naturally having a feeling like you know that person after you've met them for the first time.
Or can't stand them.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true too. Yes. I've never put it that way, but yeah, you're exactly right.
Maybe
Or
that's what my
maybe the guy that stabbed you, might be your next door neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Very
never thought about
interesting.
that. The people that rub you the wrong way, maybe they were doing the same thing in
Yeah,
the
or the right way.
lives.
Or the right way. Or
Yeah.
places. You go into a place that
Mhm.
that seems like you've been there, all that stuff. Um, I've like I said, I've done probably in my life something like 24, 28 of these, and I've gotten benefits out of them. Not having said all I just said, whether it's true or not, there's a psychological benefit, a therapeutic benefit. I'll give you a little quick example. Uh, in my work, and you're in practice, Jenny, right? You do mediumship in practice.
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
you know how important reviews are to you.
Mhm.
Same thing with a hypnotist. I'm dependent on reviews. So one day I get this scathing 1-star review. I got lots and lots of. I get this 1-star review from someone I never worked with. I misscheduled her, and she laced into me, and it bothered me. And I asked her to reconsider. I even offered to work with her for free, and she doubled down. And I like doubled down with worse comments about me. And I was beside myself, and I recognized it was over the top. I was having too much of a reaction to this.
Mhm.
What is one bad review and a whole bunch of good ones
Mhm.
going to do? And I'm gonna get back to this in a moment about its relevance to psychotherapy. But in my case, I was having really hard time. So I called a facilitator that I worked with, a fellow called David Quigley out in Santa Rosa, and we did a past life experience. It's in my book. And suddenly I found myself as a monk, an academic monk, probably the 15th century. And I am the happiest, most self-satisfied man in the world. I'm in my turret. I've got my books. I'm a man of God. I'm a scholar. I'm so happy. And I've got 8 students, and they're in the monastery, and I teach them. They're becoming clerics themselves. And I go out to class one day, and there's a new student, and he gives me grief. He does not respect me. He does not want to be there. And it makes me nuts. I'm disrespected. He basically is doing what this lady was doing to me. He's questioning my professionalism, my value as a human, as an academic. So I complained to the abbot. And I'm experiencing all this, by the way. I remember walking down the stairs in the turret, in my sandals, in the feel of the wall, which is kind of clammy. And so I complained to the abbot. He's my friend, but he's not really. Turns out he talks to the bishop and says that about what I've done, because the new student was the nephew of the bishop.
Oh.
And back in those days, nephew did not mean nephew. It meant the illegitimate son of the bishop.
Yikes.
In my class, lacing, tearing me apart. So I'm sent to the bishop's palace, and the bishop is not friendly with me, and like I'm nothing.
Mm.
I think I used that language. Who do you think you are? You're nothing. You're a
Wow.
maggot. And I go back to the monastery, and I lose my position, and I'm in the kitchen, and I'm working, in the kitchen as a kitchen helper. This arrogant young nobleman, back in the day, if you were a nobleman and you weren't the first son, you would go into the church. And this nobleman brings his friends down, and they laugh at me. And I go out that night with a rope, and I hang myself.
Wow.
And frankly, it's emotional to talk about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I hang myself. And suicide is never a good solution
Mm-mm.
to the end of one's life. Really isn't. Not only what you do to other people around you, but what you do karmically to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I came out of that experience, and I still was not happy about my 1-star review, but it didn't bother me the same way. So there is a therapeutic benefit in doing this work. People in psychotherapy oftentimes come to a place where they're not getting any further help. They've been through. You meet people, and I've had in my office. They've been in therapy for 10 years, 20 years over the same issues without resolution. But I've had people with one session and get the therapeutic result they were looking for. One comes to mind right off the bat. This lady, she was one of these people, if you ever know these people, she was always dating the same kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And her friends would tell her, it's the same guy, a different body. And she would say, no, this one's different. This one's going to be good. And they would betray her. And she goes out with this guy, and he says to her at the outset, I want you to know I like you a lot. I don't do monogamy. I just don't believe it. I don't do it. And she heard herself think, I can fix him. Change him. And that caught her attention big time. And that's why she came to me. And what happened, she went, by the way, 1 out of 5 people are very, very adept at doing hypnotism. They get great results. It's very easy. And she's one of those. So almost immediately, even before I got where I was bringing her to, she was there. And she's a concubine in the Mideast somewhere. She's concubine of some kind of a prince, minor prince. And concubine is noble in that culture. It wasn't that she was a prostitute. She was a concubine.
Mm-hmm.
But he alluded to the fact that he would promote her to be a wife. And the real wives found out about it. And she ended up entombed. The wives had her executed in a very cruel way by entombing her alive.
Wow.
And she literally dies waiting for her prince to come.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
1 session.
Wow.
10 years of therapy. Why am I dating the same kind of guy? And I'll tell you this, which I think is kind of funny. I talked to her afterwards for other issues. She dated that guy, but without expectation. Without expectation, she was freed. And, karma to me is not punishment. Karma is lessons.
Yeah.
Things you have to learn. And she learned that. And that's one of many people that I've worked with over the years. That's what's available. I wish, if there's any psychotherapists listening to this, consider referring to a past life regressionist. If you've got a client that's stuck like that, why not? What have you got to lose?
Exactly.
Whether it's real or not, whether she made it up or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, from that point of view, matters.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if you're getting results, yeah.
One of the, I guess, what's the right word? skeptics, like one of the things that skeptics will say that just believe that do believe in these types of things, but not necessarily past lives, is that well, how do you know that it's your life? How do you know you're not just
Right.
tapping into any life? And for me personally, I feel like you know that it's yours when you have some sort of emotional reactions.
Mm.
So how do you feel about that? Like, what do you think if somebody says that to you? What's your response?
Well, first off, as I said earlier, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But there's a thing called the Akashic Records.
Hmm.
However, the Akashic Records was developed in the late 19th century by a lady called Madame Blavatsky.
Hmm.
And it's the notion that somewhere records of individual lives are stored. It may be true, I don't know. And the idea with that is that you go to that library and you find a life that's the answer to your problem, and you experience that life. Um, Above my pay grade. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, what does it matter if it helps the person?
Yeah, I'm inclined to
Yeah.
think that's not how it goes.
Yeah.
Again, my sense of it is that these lives that I've experienced were my experiences. That's a soul's progression. I'm sure you've read Michael Newton's Journey of Souls and other books like that. The idea that as souls, we evolve. We go through incarnation after incarnation, learning different things with the eventual notion of rejoining deity. The idea, theologically, that all is God, that we're all like God from looking at God, different points of view into deity. That souls have the illusion of separateness. I think God's dilemma is that it can't experience itself
Hmm.
unless it breaks itself into parts like us that get to experience creation and get to experience,
Mhm.
what's going on. That's my sense of it, at least, that we're co-creators with deity and part of deity. Um, and like Jesus Christ, kingdom of God is within, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I agree.
Good.
You mentioned earlier about how you had a really emotional response to one of your past lives,
Um,
and that many that you've talked about people having emotional response to their past lives. And the first session that we went to, I can't remember if it was the first or second one. It's been so long now, but we did it as a large group. I don't know how many people were probably there, Jenny. About 8 or 9 in that first group
One
that we
of them
did.
was, and the other one was
Yeah,
a little less. Yeah. Mhm.
and there were quite a few emotional responses from people who, because we did it all as a group, and then we would talk about what we saw as a group. And there were several cases where people broke down and wept
yeah.
over. And so it's really hard to say that, like you said, I mean, what was it? I don't know, but it was important to that person. It was definitely important to that person.
Mhm.
I guess I'm
Yeah.
always talking from 2 points of view. I believe Ian Stevenson and your University of Virginia have proven this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And then the other point that it doesn't matter. But when you do a group, if anybody ever it does do a group, you have to be allowed to let everybody experience what they experience.
Mhm.
And that's a little tough with groups. People are sometimes intimidated. Here I am. I'm crying. I'm being mauled by this wild boar, and the person next to me is having nothing. So
Yeah.
it's a little.
Mhm.
Groups are tough. I've done groups. I do groups, but it's different one-on-one where you can actually, with the facility you trust, experience whatever you experience. They have to give you permission, in a sense, to do that,
Mhm.
and you have to give yourself permission to do that. Obviously, you did if you were having that experience.
And I'll say it's intriguing too, John, because I've done these with people, with Jenny, and I've done them with the person that we went to who was a past life regressionist. But I don't know if I've ever tried to experience one from a certified hypnotist. So
Hmm.
that could be because sometimes I know that I have a little bit of a hard time getting myself settled and getting myself where I'm open. And I imagine, and have you experienced that it's just a little bit easier to get into that zone through what you do?
That's Interesting question. I'm not sure. The lady that I went to from my private Riley experience was not a hypnotist. I have got no idea what she did.
Mm.
She was probably somebody a bit more like you, Jenny. She was medium sort. The psychic kind of energy is a whole different way to go about it. The hypnotic way is formulaic, and you get somebody in the trance state. Hypnotism generally is even defined as bypassing the analytical mind. And that's one reason why children have these experiences, because they're not filtering. I had a brother, actually, who used to talk about his real mother. And at the time, we dismissed it because, I was a kid. But kids don't have the filter. So whatever they experience. In hypnosis, you create the childlike state where you allow whatever's there to be there. Carl Jung talked about the idea of conscious, subconscious, super unconscious, collective unconscious. But in the work that we do, it's like, conscious, subconscious, your prior life, your soul life. When you get out of your own way, that you can experience who you really are. So I really don't know. I wouldn't invalidate anybody's experience. And like I said, the lady I did 2 more with her. There was no induction. I just basically sat next to this powerful person, and suddenly I'm experiencing private Riley.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And a lot of my colleagues would not agree with that.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, but that's how it seems to me.
We had a question earlier. This is going a little bit sideways on the topic, but I think I was going to ask something similar. So Wally over on YouTube was wondering, what happens when we die? Where do we go? What do we do? Have you had any experiences with people during hypnosis where they explain anything about that particular?
I've had a little, and my own as well. I've had some fairly. There was a lady called Zelita Grant in Colorado. I did a training with her, specializing on the afterlife. And when you die and you go to this place, you basically kind of relax, kick back, and you evaluate. What was that life about? What did I learn there? What does my soul need to know next time? In Tibetan Buddhism, they call it the bardo. You go to that place where you, with soul families, with other spiritual entities, including helpers and guiders, you work on healing from what you just went through. One of my addictions is Facebook. And I was on Facebook, and this guy who is into reincarnation says, I don't care what anybody says. I ain't coming back. This is a tough planet. A lot of people that do this work think there are many other places you can incarnate. And Earth is particularly dense. Everything here is effortful. We're victimed by gravity. To raise your hand is effort. You can't really learn in the bardo because there's nothing to push against. There's no adversity. But we choose adversity here in a particular way, a curriculum. So that's what I think. And I also think we reunite with our soul family. I've had direct experience of that, which was quite a beautiful experience myself, to be with other spirits that I am part of, what they call a soul family. So that is my sense of it. Everything I say, though, I say with my sense of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's your experience.
My
So
experience.
for you, because I have my own definition of soul family. For you, what is your definition of soul family?
I don't know how to put it into. By the way, language is inadequate for a lot of this
It
stuff.
sure is. It's a mess.
Yeah, I mean, really, is you could talk about it, but you can't communicate it.
No.
I experience souls, and when I had that experience, it was as if we were all light, just as if we were all light and connected with each other. And some of the lights were closer to me, some of them were intimate in a different way. Some had certain. So my sense is that that almost, if you can imagine, like a circle of light, within the mind direct experience of deity. But I would love to hear what your sense is.
Um, I guess my experience of soul family is kind of what we were referring to earlier, that it seems to be specific other consciousness energies that we seem to just want to come back with
Yeah,
over and over again, for good or bad, like we were saying.
to
Like,
play
I
with,
think,
like
yeah,
friends to play with.
yeah,
It's
we
all
we
meant to be fun, by the way.
have
Good, clean fun.
different experiences with each other through different relationships, but yeah, people that we have that connection with, that we want to experience something else. Let's do something else. Yeah,
Mm.
let's put this hat on this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but some people have a definition of soul family is um, thinking that about that specific part of source that you come from, that you're all that one part, that you're
Oh,
actually the same energy that was split, which is an interesting idea for it. But I haven't experienced that myself.
yeah. Again, I don't have direct experience of that.
Yeah.
And I try not to speculate. I don't know what I don't know, and I
Mm.
know what I don't know, and I know that I don't know that.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
that's where my part comes in, John, because that's all I do is speculate, right?
Well, that's the thing about two souls united is they say opposites attract, but you complement one another, obviously.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are you familiar with the concept of twin flames?
Uh, a little bit.
Okay.
You'll have to give me your sense of it, though.
Well, it's an idea that essentially, kind of like what Jenny was talking about, what we were talking about just a second ago, about how people, like, one consciousness energy will be split,
Oh, that absolutely, yeah.
and
Uh,
then they're trying to
at the
find
same time, so
themselves.
basically, that you are one soul, and you're having two incarnations at the same time, if that's what you mean. That
Yes.
I'm familiar with.
Hmm.
Again, it's conceptual. My background and my orientation is experiential, so that's a good concept for sure. And then you got soul mates. You also have
Hmm.
soul dates, where you hang with somebody for a while for a particular reason. And then the twin flame thing, yeah, one soul split at the same time. Also, a lot of people that write about this stuff think that only part of our energy comes to Earth, that part of it always remains up there somewhere. Uh, Again, I don't do the conceptual part of it.
Hmm.
That makes sense to me. I've got no direct experience of it though.
Yeah, that's what you would call the higher self, right, Jenny?
By yourself, yeah.
By yourself. Yep. Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do have experience with that, but we won't go into that right now.
Which I'm still waiting for. Jenny's supposed to be doing a higher self reading for me at some point, but see, I'm a husband, so I always get put at the back of the line. So
Right.
I'm
You
on the
got to
waiting
take the
list. I'll
class on Sunday. Take the class on Sunday.
I'll get there,
Um,
John. Maybe I need to put a negative review on Google or
oh
something.
yeah. Well, then you might never
Well,
get it.
that'll catch your attention. You mentioned I was in. I'll tell a story, and I'll tell you my story. The story I'll tell you is about somebody that I met, and he had gotten divorced, and he was driving him nuts, absolutely nuts, and nuts to the point where I don't know if they may have been a child together they shared, but he was like, they're divorced, and he's asking her for dinner, fancy dinners to discuss things and bringing her gifts, and he's not letting go. And he did a past life regression with me, and suddenly he finds himself in. Uh, I'll tell you how it sequentially, in terms not of his experience, but in terms of history. He's a wrangler in the southwest, and he's out herding cattle. He's a young guy, maybe 17, never been off the ranch. And he goes into town in a bar, and there's this painted lady. He'd never seen anything like this in his life. And he's out of his mind in love. He goes back to that pub and that place, and she's gone. She's moved on. And that was, in this life, his wife. So, that life complete, one encounter, it blew his mind, and then he never gets to see her again. Then he finds himself in World War I, and he's in England. He's going to ship off and over to France, and he might die. And patriotic women at the time would be nice to GIs, American GIs, who are going to maybe die. So he meets this woman again in a bar, and they have a night of not passion that way, but of intense romantic encounter. He's in love again. And he goes to France, and he ends up surviving. He writes her letters, and she never responds back to him. On the way back to the States, he dies. The ship goes down. That's his wife again. So in this life, that's his wife again. These two encounters. And he got this incredible breakthrough in my office. I have permission to tell this story, by the way, where he realized she just wasn't that into him. And he told this incredible story, when he asked her to marry him. She said something like, "Well, I guess you're not that bad."
Goodness gracious.
So there is two souls doing this dance.
Yeah.
I love that line from John Lennon, "Two spirits dancing so strange." That's now my experience. I was in a training, and they were saying you can go back and you can experience your spouse or somebody in this life. So I chose my wife. And so I find myself suddenly I'm in Russia. And you can't tell what it could have been. It was Tsarist times. It could have been 18th century, 15th century. But the blacksmith, big black beard, banging metal in this little lean-to kind of shop, a dirt road village. And that's my husband. And that's Maria in my current life. And I'm his wife. And I feel so privileged. I had the experience on my wedding night. My mother told me what to expect, and that I would be beaten. And he didn't do that. Victor was nice to me. He liked me. I feel like the luckiest girl in the village. Husband that has a good trade and even a sense of humor. I feel so blessed. And the facilitator asked me, "What does your husband say to you when you bring him his dinner?" And I start laughing. I say, "Nothing. He's a man of few words." As you probably figured out by now, I talk all the time. My wife is a woman of few words.
She's still that way.
She speaks when it's important. I go on and on. Half the time she doesn't even listen to me. I know that, and that's okay. I'm okay with that, actually. But anyway, the facilitator says that every life ends. So, and when you facilitate with somebody in a past life session, you go to an experience that's significant, and then maybe another one, and then you go to the death. So a significant experience is I hear from the ladies in the village that the Cossacks are going to come, and they're going to draft the men. And in our village, when you're drafted, they're gone. You become a widow whose husband's still alive. And I tell him, "Victor, we got to get out of here." He doesn't listen to me. I'm only a woman. I can't get his attention. He tells me to stop listening to the ladies. He thought I had more sense than that. And of course, they come and they take him. And I spend the rest of my life as a widow whose husband is maybe alive, maybe not. I raise children. I work like a fiend to my dying day. I always believed I had a great marriage. I was always grateful that I had a good husband. And that is my wife, Maria, in this life. By the way, in my book, this is my book. And that's me, the female, as Lena, my wife's wife. And the other guy, the black guy, is a shaman. I had this amazing experience as a shaman. My best life was the shaman. Uh, this guy who did everything right, all the rituals, all the right herbs, the rattles, the vestments, and I was never quite sure if it was real, you know. And anyway, oh, thank you,
I was gonna say that too. It's I
thank you.
love the cover.
Yeah, yeah. This guy, he was my favorite. Um, the African shaman. Uh, he when he I wrote poems in my book. There are poems about each of these lives,
Oh,
and
neat.
uh, I wrote this poem about him and also about Lena. But I remember that experience. The facilitator, again, when you do this work, go to an experience that's important. Go to another one. And I experienced healing the chief in the village. And frankly, I'm as amazed as anybody that
Yeah.
this guy is healed. Did I do it? I don't know. Uh, but uh, there was this tree. I used to have a tree. I had this experience of me communing with the tree. It was my mentor. But that guy dies. He has the idea, in that culture, you could get male potency by rhino horns.
Mm.
Powder rhino horns.
Mhm.
And I had this thought, if I can hypnotize a rhino, I can get his power. So there I find myself in a clearing. I've got my rattle and I'm trying to not a good idea.
No.
I did not ask the tree about that idea. And the rhino gorges me
Oh my
and I
goodness.
die in that life. But of all
Wow.
of my 24/20 experiences, that is the one, my African shaman that I think is my favorite by far. I love that experience. I'm important in the village. Private
Mhm.
Riley would have appreciated that.
Yeah.
My
Mhm.
position of honor, and yet I was always skeptical. Like when I talk now, and I don't talk like a lot of people who do this work. I've got the skeptical part
Yeah.
that's always rolling around. Is it real, or am I making it up?
Well, I can completely understand uh, how you feel about that. I have friends who are into paranormal or
Hmm.
have past lives and things like that, and I have friends who are just very logical,
Right.
that just don't believe any of those kinds of things. But sometimes, things subjects like that will come up, and I've talked about past lives with them before, and I'm like, look, I don't know what it was. I'm not trying to sell anything here, but this
Right.
is my experience, and so I can completely relate with that.
I have.
Because once you have the experience, you've had the experience, and I think that goes with almost anything paranormal, whether you've seen ghosts, whether you've seen a UFO, whether you've had a past life regression, where all the different things that go with the paranormal. It's really easy to logically dismiss those ideas until you have an experience, and then all of a sudden, those things change.
I think the general thing, I believe, and again, you're down in Virginia, that they have proven this is the way that it is generally.
Yeah.
About
Mhm.
specific experiences, you can't try to convince anybody,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
because there's no way that they'll look at you like you're weird. I do like to point to people who, of course, won't bother to read Ian Stevenson's book, Contempt Prior to Investigation. But I know some people in my life who have had abductee experiences, and yet, until the UFOs land on the White House lawn,
Mhm.
it's not proven. And I know that Congress is doing this stuff, but reincarnation, in my opinion, is proven as a general principle. Uh, Whether you're specifically
Mhm.
were abducted or you imagined it, becomes a whole different thing. But it's a little different UFOs versus this because, in my mind, it's proven. And I know that they're looking at it, and then we can. I don't want to get into the debate about. Some people will say that it's proven, but I mean definitively proven uh, uh, that they exist. And maybe you can convince me because I guess I'm an agnostic on that. I just don't know.
I was gonna ask if you ever had anybody in a hypnotist session that had an ET life.
I have one person who wants to do it with me. Actually, two. One is somebody that you never would think he is. I mentioned him, the medical community. That I don't want the medical community to think I'm weird. He's in the medical community,
Mm-hmm.
prominent in my community, and had an absolute experience that he is convinced was real. He wants to go back and recover that memory. And there's another person I know as well that we just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But,
But that was for like kind of like abduction type of situation.
well, abduction. So what you can do with hypnosis is you can go. Here's the thing to consider about hypnosis. And again, this is why I respect so much Ian Stevenson's work. There's a thing in hypnosis called false memory syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
I can hypnotize you that that I'm Abe Lincoln, and you
Mm-hmm.
might experience me as Abe Lincoln. I'm not really not Abe Lincoln, but you experience it as that.
Yeah.
And so that colors the whole thing in hypnosis. So if somebody, I over the years I've had, and believe it or not, the number is probably like 5 people. These were all males. Wait a minute, one was a female. They want to know, did their spouse cheat on them?
Oh yeah.
And they want me to hypnotize them while they're present to go back and recover that memory. A, they can lie, but B, they can remember it differently than it really happened.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, she wants me to go, and I say no. But on the other hand, and that's why it's terrible. Children, little people, without the filter. If a therapist says, "So, did your uncle touch you inappropriately?" and a little kid might actually remember,
Yeah.
like the Salem witch trials, where the girls thought they actually saw people flying around. Their imagination did it. And hypnosis makes that very easy.
Mm-hmm.
So that is another thing about hypnotic recalled past life regression is, could it be just false memory syndrome?
Yeah. So you have to be
That has
extraordinarily careful with what you
You
say.
really
So you
do.
don't
And I am
suggest
very,
anything.
very careful.
Yeah.
But, still, you never know. I
Yeah.
mean, the very fact that you're doing a past life regression, the implication is that you had a past
I
life.
believe it. Yeah. Very
Mhm.
true.
Yeah, I think that's one of the criticisms. I'm currently reading Whitley Strieber's Communion, which I've been familiar with the story, but I had never read the book. But that's one of the things about going through the hypnotic regression of a extraterrestrial abduction. Kind of talking about what you were just saying. So we have this really interesting information that comes out about that, but how much of that is
Made up.
made up, or what are the effects that the
Or
hypnotic
misremembered.
state has on what his memories were? And
Mm-hmm.
so you're saying pretty honestly that in a hypnotic state, you're very open to suggestion.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing for me to say, but in some ways, the thing you experience, Jenny, with having, to me is, and the thing I experienced my first time, where suddenly I just had the experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why children are so powerfully valuable in this work, because they just have the experiences, and then some
Yeah.
people will suddenly have an experience of a past life, and it can be very vivid. I had one once that just came upon me, and that was I was a hunter in primitive times, probably prehistoric,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm with my little tribe of hunters. Maybe there were 4 of us out, and we're hunting. We've been hunting for days, and we're not doing well, and we're taking down this animal, and I get kicked in the groin. Not a good experience.
Mm.
And I literally die.
Wow.
And my and one of them was a relative, and the others were people that I know all my life, and they can't stay with me. So they leave me with a gourd uh, filled with water, that I can have water, and they just leave me to die.
Mm.
And I experienced that life again, going up through the trees. And I see my body lying down there. And this happened when I was in an EST seminar. If you remember the old EST training, it just happened. I've been spending like 2 days involved in lectures and guided experiences, but this just came like that very powerfully. And I believe that was one that just, and that I have high degree of respect for, because it just happened. There
Yeah.
was no manipulation. It was just like, oh my God, what's occurring to me? Anyway, I
I
don't want
think
to
that's really interesting there. Talking about the children specifically, because they're doing it without having to go through any regression.
Yeah, they just have
So
experience.
they just have the experience, which, reminds me that we had an experience like that with our oldest child. He's an adult now, but when he was young, we're big Christmas people, John. We like to do Christmas just like a lot of other people, but it's,
It's a
we do
family.
Christmas pretty big. And once he was old enough to, maybe 2, 3 years old, he was absolutely terrified of the Christmas tree. Just absolutely terrified of the
Yeah, if
Christmas
you took
tree.
it, if you took him near it, he would just start freaking out.
Yeah.
And then, me and Jenny were kind of sitting around one night, like, man, that's kind of, I wonder what it is. And then it kind of popped into our minds that, well, how many people back in the day had their house burned down or were killed in a fire that was
Sure.
started by
Yeah,
a
Christmas tree.
Christmas tree?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, we never, followed up on it, but I think we both were always kind of had it in our minds like, yeah, I think he could have experienced something before with,
Yeah.
a fire, because he was also very afraid of fire.
Mhm.
Like it was fire and the Christmas tree were like his two biggest phobias
And
when he was really young.
synchronistically here, his name actually means fire. So
Yeah.
maybe there's some
Synchronous.
subconscious thing
Yeah.
going on there.
Well, if you're going to incarnate and you've got a fear of fire because you burnt to death in a Christmas tree, why not have your parents name you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oops.
another
Sorry,
interesting
kid.
tidbit, I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but it's just something that popped into my head, so I'll say it, Jenny.
Yeah.
He's in the military now. And
Oh, I know what you're getting ready to say.
and I thought for sure, because I was a
I didn't even
Navy
think
brat.
about
I
it.
thought for sure when he went in that his rank would be seaman. And when we went to his graduation, he said, "No, my rank is fireman."
He's fireman. I didn't even think about that until just now when you were getting
Wow.
ready to say that. Weird.
Who knows? I
Yeah.
mean, really and truly, who knows? There's so much we don't know. That's one thing I like about your podcast generally. There's so much we don't know,
Yeah.
and people don't talk about. You're not likely to have this kind of a conversation, with your next door neighbor.
No.
Even if he was in a prior life and stabbed you with a
Yeah.
spear, you're not likely to have this.
No,
John,
not likely.
that's whether you're talking about past life regressions and UFOs or even just real agreed upon science. I mean, like the news stories we had today. I mean, they're finding
Mm.
all kinds of weird things out there, and you have Harvard professors talking about alien Dyson spheres being built around stars, and
Yeah.
or maybe the next question I have for you, something else that's coming from mainstream science, the idea of time not being linear, of the past, present, and future all happening at the same time. Have you ever run into the case of finding someone who's had a future life?
I never have, and I don't know why. I think it's clear that in the mind of God, there is only now. That time as space are artificially constructed, not real. And you can argue it makes sense that you can go to the afterlife and come back at any juncture. Um, on the other hand, I've never had anybody have that experience. And I know very, very few
Mm.
people who do what I do have had that, although I know, some that have. So I really don't know about that. And it's kind of convenient that they tend to be linear.
Yeah.
Again, which argues for conscious intervention. That
Mhm.
if you had a future life, you might dismiss that. How can that possibly be?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Mm.
Unless somehow souls do tend to experience sequentially, to enter the stream of consciousness, a stream of life, in a linear kind of way. But that's what that would mean. It would mean just that you enter the stream in a linear way,
Hmm.
Mhm.
not that time itself is linear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
another
John,
one of
if you
those
if you
weird
ever
ones.
do a future life for yourself, you need to come back and tell us about
I will.
it.
I will. But even if you did a future life for yourself, in terms of where you are in your current life, it would be past,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
I
Uh-huh.
was
if I'm
I
I
telling you
was
don't
now,
know.
if I'm telling you now, I had an experience of this. Uh, no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Again, I try not to think about this kind of thing.
It gets really, I mean, it gets really difficult because
It's speculative.
time and time is something that is very difficult for us to put our thumb on.
Mhm.
I was just watching a program with Neil deGrasse Tyson
Yeah, yeah.
and Michio Kaku, and they were discussing this in general, time. And the way that they were talking about it is essentially that past events are happening right now, parallel to the events that are happening in the present,
Yeah.
just as future events are happening instantaneously with what's happening now. So it's very confusing, at least for me, to
Yeah.
be able to wrap my mind around that because it's kind of built into, I think, all of us to think of time as linear. I don't know anyone who doesn't experience linear time.
But I think that a lot of people would find it easy to accept that time is an illusion. And
Yes.
in the mind of God, there's only now,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
from that perspective, only now.
I was also thinking too just now that if you went to look at a future life, would you be able to see or allowed to see or allow yourself to see those really important experiences, because would you want to know them before they
Ah,
happened?
ah, it
Huh?
might, here, okay, this makes sense. It might be future in terms of Earth linearity, but in terms of John's soul, it'd be past.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
I was getting ready to say because if you have a future life, and then this is just once again speculative because we haven't even really gotten to that. But if you were to have a future life and you went to do a life regression, um, and you learned a lesson from a future life, then it would
Be
only,
past.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
exactly.
Keisha said she needs Advil now.
But
I
better than
agree.
children's strength heroin. Good.
um,
It makes our brains hurt trying to think about this time stuff.
so uh, we still have some time to go for all you listening out there and everyone in chat. Thank you guys so much once again for hanging out with us and joining in on this conversation we're having tonight. I did want to mention John brought up his book earlier, and we do have a link at the top of
Yep.
the chat
Links up
that
there
will take you to be able
A
to
nice cover.
purchase
with the beautiful
the book
cover.
with the beautiful cover.
Yep.
If you're listening in the future, or is that the present, or is it the past? There will be a link down in the comments section below, so you can go check out everything we have associated with John tonight. So you can go check out his webpage and be able to purchase the book if you so choose.
Mhm.
We had some questions earlier that we've gotten to. If you have a question for John, make sure to put it in chat and we will get to that as we continue to go on with the show. All right. Well, there was one other big thing from your bio that I read before you came in today, and that I wanted to talk to you about for sure. And that is that you have done a Kickstarter and you have an Oracle deck that you're working on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I do. And another thing to think about when I think about, that life I had with my wife, this me as female, I came back into this life with Lita died with not having been heard. What her life was about was I'm not heard. My life is about being heard. In my
Mhm.
life, I became a college teacher. I became an ad guy. I became a madman. You know, TV commercials. I became, of all things, a hypnotist. My life is about being heard. But as an ad guy, I had the experience of simplifying things. If I have a check on Grammarly or something, I write at an eighth grade level. I think at an eighth grade level. I learned how to do things simply. And in my book, one of my missions here is to give people access to reincarnation in a way that's accessible, without being complicated, without making stuff up, without being too much in the woo-woo, in the woo, but not in the woo-woo. Uh, so that's my mission.
Just one woo.
My mission in this life is, and my training is to communicate things simply. What I did, artificial intelligence is huge now. It's changing our world in many, many, many ways. Some of them wonderful, some of them not so wonderful. And back in July of last year, I asked ChatGPT to give me 64 principles that every human has to master if we're to evolve to be our very best. And within 10 seconds, I had 64 principles. I took these and I made an oracle deck based not on my experience or opinion, but on what humanity has come up with. 64 principles each of us must master if we're to evolve. And I turned it into an oracle deck. And I call it the Universal Mind Map Oracle Meditation System. And an oracle deck, whatever it is, forgetting tarot for a second. But if you go to Barnes and Noble or Amazon, you'll see dozens of them. There are things like the Cat Lover's Oracle, the Celtic Goddess Oracle. They're all the mind of one person. So one person will have created this deck of 53, 55, whatever, 64, 78 cards from their experience. What I have is a deck that's based on humanity's experience, which allows universal mind to choose for you what lesson to work on today. And I'm very excited about it.
It's really cool.
Yeah, the text of each of them I made myself, and I'm very clear about that. I wrote the text. Like, for example, one of the things that humanity believes, if you want to evolve to be your very best, you must practice forgiveness. I mean, that's a pretty basic thing. It's one of the 64 principles, forgiveness. Another is gratitude. Another is setting boundaries with people. But the text of the cards themselves I wrote from my own experience, and I use artificial intelligence to make the artwork. And all of the art except one of them, I would put prompts into artificial intelligence art programs, and I would create art. And for each of the cards in the deck, I went through at least 200 images per card.
Wow.
I found one that I resonated with.
Yeah.
Except one. And one of them was acceptance. And for acceptance, I use a quote from this thing called the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, courage, change what I can, and there's no difference. And for that one, I put that text as a prompt, and I got this incredible image.
First
and that
try.
one was first try, one image. I wasn't going to mess with that. But the rest of them, I just kind of created. The images, in my mind, aren't that important. It's the 64 principles that humans have to master. And there's nothing like this in the world. This is, unique. And it wasn't possible before AI.
Yeah.
Even if you were try to be an academic researcher, you got to comb through all of philosophy, psychology, religion, and identify principles. It's still your bias. This was an algorithm that just spidered through, published human wisdom, and came up with these 64 principles. So and I put it on Kickstarter, and I funded very quickly. Within 36 hours, it funded. And I'm excited about it.
That is exciting.
Yeah, I always felt like everybody else had the manual of how to live, and I didn't. This is the manual of how to live, not from my mind, but from the mind of humanity.
What a great way to use AI.
It really is cool. It's a very specific application of AI.
Yeah.
And a lot of AI things can be terrifying, frankly.
Yes.
But this was, I think, a very good application of it.
And Keisha just put the link for
Keisha
that.
has found it.
Thank you, Keisha.
She's the best.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious because you used AI for those 64 principles. When you were combing through those, did you have any in there that you were cautious about, or that
I had
you
some
were
that I
like, well, I don't
didn't
know if I'll
resonate
put that
with.
in there or not?
Didn't resonate with. Uh, and that's probably because I need to learn. One of them was one of the principles is connection with nature.
Uh,
Humanity thinks if you want to evolve, you need to be connected to nature. I live in my head, and but there it was. So what
yeah.
wasn't cautious about. And by the way, I did it a couple of times to refine. I did it once, and then I went back and did it, and I did a little bit of AI is not perfect yet. A little bit of reconciliation, so that
Yeah.
um, I got what I think was consensus.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that because there's there's often so much advice you can give, but we all sometimes need our own. I mean, we all need our own advice too. So it's I was curious if something came up where you're like, well, man, that slapped me in the face, or so
I
I could agree with that one too, John.
I
Connection with
wish
nature.
I had. I don't have the list here with me. I don't think. Uh, it's something that because it was an algorithm. I think anybody more or less who looks at it would agree that these are all valid. Uh, these principles: forgiveness, connection, altruism, kindness.
Mm,
These are some basic things that's hard to argue with. Um, Courage, going beyond your comfort zone, that kind of thing.
very interesting.
I
Well,
can
I thought that was. Go ahead,
I
Jenny.
can I can share the screen here.
Oh,
Let's
very
see.
cool. And very
This
cool.
one. Yeah. There's some of the
Oh,
images.
yeah. And all
Yeah.
generated by AI. Transcend materialism. The mirror is about self-reflection. Oh, here's the thing. 37 is a U-turn. I got 37, 73 people to do a beta test with me. They worked with the deck before even the Kickstarter went. And one person got 37 5 times in a row.
That's a lot of
37.
U-turns.
I think I computed the odds were like 4 trillion to 1
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
occur. And that U-turn is about you're going in the wrong direction. It's
Mm-hmm.
about being willing to make a U-turn in life, to make a
Yeah.
correction, changing when you find yourself going into a bad direction. The maze is about having a plan for life. One of the principles is you need to know where you're going. That old quote: "If you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else." Patience, uh, transcend materialism. These are the kinds of things. Patience. Who would argue with patience as being
Yeah.
necessary
Mm-hmm.
to be an evolved human?
Well, I know that you said the images didn't matter, but to you, but the images turned out really great.
They
I
did,
think they
didn't
look
they?
beautiful. Yeah.
I'm very. And by the way, I've got mixed feelings. Uh, when I did the beta test, I had a panel. Uh, I think 12 people sat with me on a panel, and some of them were artists.
Yeah.
It's tough for AI. Uh, I can't imagine what must be like today to be a young artist.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
was an ad writer. I can't imagine what it's like to be a young ad writer. You can create a brochure to promote your mediumship business in 48 seconds.
Yeah.
And there's a brochure.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt I had mixed feelings. I do say this: I would not have created this deck if I had to pay somebody to generate all that. I just wouldn't have.
Yeah.
I don't think
I
I
mean,
took the money out of.
64 images would have taken,
Oh, yeah.
probably a year at least, if not longer, and then it would have been a ton of
And
money.
I've got mixed feelings about it, but
Yeah.
nonetheless,
Yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
how I made my deck.
Well, it's interesting. I think we have to bring it up because there's some synchronicity there. But Jenny just released her
I
Oracle deck
just
as
I
well.
came
Oh,
I just made an Oracle deck too. Yeah. Mine's based on lessons and information that we've learned through all of the medium readings I've done over the years.
see, the thing is, I don't mean in any way to invalidate that. In that case, people are getting your wisdom. they're getting what you've experienced in life.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If your wisdom is solid and good, they'll have good results.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, for me, it's not my wisdom, it's the wisdom that's come through the
True,
readings.
of your people.
Yeah,
Of your
it's
Mhm.
come through for the people I've
in
read.
a way, what you've done the same thing that I did. I
Yeah.
did it in using AI. You did it
Yeah.
by having a sample of things that came through you. So
Yes,
in some ways,
through
it's the exact same thing.
hundreds of readings, yeah.
The exact same thing. What the universe told you through people,
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the world according to Jenny.
Yes, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So we
Well,
definitely
my
understand the
information
process.
mixed in there a little, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so is mine. You can't
Yeah.
avoid it. There's
No,
no way
you
to
can't.
avoid it. You know, and in my case, I wrote the texts of the actual cards.
Mhm.
Uh, so I know there's some bias in there. For example, nowhere in the 64 principles was reincarnation,
Yeah.
but it's inherent in my deck, and I make it very clear in the preface that that's me.
Mhm.
I'm bringing that into this picture.
Yeah.
Somebody else could take those same 64 principles, and they could create different images and write different texts, be totally different. As long as the principles would be the same, it would
Mhm.
have that same level of validity with bias built in.
Yeah.
But I think no matter what, though, John, I think it works because when people buy Oracle decks, they're buying it for that purpose, and a lot of times people know who the author is who created the deck. So if they buy your deck, they're
Yeah.
looking for that inherently. Just like if someone buys Jenny's deck, they're looking for what she does inherently.
The
And
only thing is, I have much more respect for your deck.
Oh, well, thanks.
It came from working with lots of different people.
Yeah.
And so if you get somebody who's, say, depressed, and they write it, they create their deck, 64 principles, but it comes from the mind of somebody that's depressed,
Mhm.
and you're going to work with that deck. You're going to get only what that person's offering. What
Yeah.
your deck does, Jenny, is what's your deck called, by the way?
It's called the Reflections Oracle.
Reflections Oracle.
Yeah.
You're getting the wisdom communicated through spirit, a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So you can rely on that because it's a broader net, I think.
Yeah. I kind of like the what you said earlier there, that we kind of did a little bit of the same thing, just
Very
in a
yeah,
different
similar,
way.
yeah.
as opposed to just what you were thinking. You didn't do the world according to Jenny.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
you did what came to you from
Yes.
working with people.
Yes.
And I also thought it was interesting when you were talking about testing the deck and someone getting the same cards so many times.
5 times.
Um, yeah, it's that's another one of
Make
those
that off.
things. Uh, Talking about personal experience and having to have that experience before you buy into those things, and divination is one of them. Um, and most that are in chat know, like me and Jenny both do tarot readings, and I do rune readings also. And I just kind of got into it very much with the skeptical mind. And I said, well, I want to find out about these. I want to try it and see, and well, it's just like everything else. It's easy to explain away until you have your experiences with it, and that's one of the ones that will happen is you will I'll say, John, I have a tarot deck that I use almost. I have other ones, but I use this one almost every time. And there's still cards in there after hundreds of readings
You
that I've
never
done
pick.
now that I've never
Yep.
picked.
Yeah.
And I have rune stones. There's not that many of the Elder Futhark, and there's still runes I've never chosen.
It's some,
So I would have to think that the mathematical probability of that would be astronomical.
Yeah.
I did some computations, and that lady that I mentioned, it was 4 trillion to 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, it still might be. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I think when you do that work, it's what does it resonate with you?
Mhm.
Mhm.
In her case, it resonated with her. It's like, oh my God, I have to look at it. She knew exactly what it was about.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
usually what happens.
And we see it every Friday, when Jenny does her stream, and you get a collective goosebumps throughout, everyone who, everyone who's experiencing at the same time. And like I said earlier, it's the same thing where I might be talking to a friend who's not really into that stuff. Maybe we're friends because we both like sports and video games or something, and they'll say, so how's the reading runes thing? And that seems kind of weird. And it's like, and then you kind of go the same thing. It's like, well, it's you got to have that experience of doing it and then going like, man, there's just something about it that inherently that something's going on with it. And almost every time I do readings, there's like a just like, man, this can't, there it goes. You almost laugh to yourself a lot. And there's many times I do where I just kind of laugh because there it is again.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that. Yeah. Well, do you have an idea of when your deck will be released? Is it already available for purchase through there, or?
Not yet. The people that did the Kickstarter, yeah, they're getting delivered in August.
Okay.
How is yours available, Jenny?
I did mine as a print on demand through a website called the Game Crafter because I didn't want to have to deal with the shipping.
The Game Crafter, yeah.
I hate shipping things, so I was like, I'll let somebody else deal with
I like
that.
using Amazon. I haven't done I consider the Game Crafter. I've done Amazon.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm familiar with doing things through Amazon too, but I went with the Game Crafter this time, and I think so far everybody that's gotten one has been pretty impressed with the printing of it. So,
that's good.
Yeah, it came out very nice. We did have a question earlier from Keisha, kind of going back to the beginning of our conversation. How long have you been doing hypnotherapy, and what made you choose this path?
Oh, thank you, Keisha. I told you I was a madman. I wrote TV commercials, and when you're a madman, every day you're judged on your ideas. Every day you need new ideas. You need to sell the ideas. And a friend of mine, another copywriter, went to a hypnotist for creativity, and he got great results. So I went to the guy, and I got great results. I could program myself to go to lunch, fingers together, come back. I'll have 3 campaign ideas, and there they'd be.
Wow.
So that caught my attention, and I trained. Hypnotism is an interesting field. It's not licensed, and there are no graduate degrees in it. So I took self-contained courses, and I became certified a long time ago. I was probably 29 or something. And then back in 1983 or 84, I developed this thing called Hypnovision Video, which was the world's first subliminal hypnotic video program series. And I was incredibly successful. I got on national television, NBC, ABC News, every bookstore in the country, quit my job to promote this business and failed financially.
Oh, no.
I didn't believe you could be on national television in every bookstore in the country and fail. But people went out of business. I had a wife that wasn't working, 2 kids, mortgage. So I'm back into advertising. And I sold my company when I was 50. So I wasn't rich enough to do nothing or old enough to do nothing. And I was at a loss. For about a year, I tried just to be a freelance writer, and I didn't like it. And my brother-in-law actually said, "You used to like hypnosis. Why don't you go do that?" And that connected. So I went back and I recertified, and I started doing. And I have had a wonderful career before the past life stuff, working with people to change their lives, working with cancer patients. Cancer is like a hypnotic diagnosis. People go into despair. So I would work with them on recovery and getting a positive healing attitude. I would work with them on handling nausea from chemotherapy. And I would work with them experimentally on using the mind to heal. I'm in a hospital, Rhode Island Hospital. Rhode Island Hospital is the name of the hospital. And I had to be very careful about that. But I would always cast it as an experiment. And people said they got great results out of that. So, I really, it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. I've saved lives over the years, getting people off of cigarettes.
What's one of your favorite success stories from just the regular hypnosis?
This was a fun one. One comes right to mind. And he was a guy, he was 65, and he came for smoking. And I said to him, as you would always do, why do you want to quit smoking? And he would say, I don't. My wife wants me to quit. You know, my daughters,
That
I love.
sounds familiar. Yeah.
He said, they'll pay you. We can just talk about sports. Well, they'll pay you. It'll be fine. And I was going to cut him loose. And then he said, wait. They want me to quit so much. I can give them, this is my gift to my family. And I was a little skeptical, but he succeeded. When he said that, he made it his own. He had a reason. You know, he didn't want to. He loved smoking. He said, it's my favorite thing. He was 2 packs a day. My favorite
Wow.
thing. And every year, that's not true, except for the last 2 years. Now, this was 20 years ago, so I suspect he's no longer around. But every January, I get got another year. And the first year he sent me that email, he said he'd had a heart attack before we met. I'm convinced he wouldn't be alive. I worked with everybody in his family, you know, his children, his grandchildren, because they know working with me saved his life. Now, I'll tell you that he saved his life. I was a catalyst to that. But that is my absolute favorite. I love working with smokers to this day. I try to discourage a lot of things I have no patience for anymore or interest, but I still love working with smokers and watching them change their lives. It's the biggest bang for your buck. If anybody's listening as a smoker, you quit smoking and the benefits are enormous to you in terms of health and well-being. You know.
I think Mr. Weird does. He said, make me quit smoking.
Well,
Mr. Weird, we have the link above if
I
you
said
want to.
that there's a link at the top.
And Mr. Weird, there's lots of people you can work with. I think that it's consider the possibility in a universe where there are no coincidences. Maybe the fact that you were listening to this particular podcast is your wake-up call that it's time to take your life seriously. Seriously.
I like that, Mr. Weird. Wink, wink.
Seriously. In a world where there are no coincidences, where everything is in divine order, maybe the reason Mr. Weird tuned in today was to really face the simple fact. You know, smoking, it's not innocent. It's and the thing about smoking, I also work with a lot of addicts. I work with alcoholics, drug addicts of various sorts. With an addiction like heroin or alcohol, a life has a crisis where suddenly you bottom out and then you're motivated to make a change. Usually with cigarettes, that doesn't occur. One day goes into another, until suddenly you have a heart attack or you stroke. Or you go to the doctor and they say, we have bad news for you, you've got lung cancer. Or emphysema or emphysema, other cancers. So, you know, a thing like watching this, you know, if you've stayed with us the whole time, you've spent a lot of time with us, maybe is your wake-up call that it's time to take it seriously and to do something about it. Just maybe.
Yeah. Smoking is one of those things. It's you know, because I used to be a heavy smoker, and I would think about, and then I would hear stories about famous musicians and stuff that died from heroin overdoses, and I'd be like, how could you do that? I mean, why couldn't you just give up the heroin? Like, you know, I mean, why couldn't you just quit? And then I realized that every time I buckled my seatbelt in the car, or every time that I finished my meal, or every time, there were all these little triggers I had built throughout my day where I had to have a cigarette. And even today, I haven't. I usually I haven't been a regular smoker in 20 years, roughly, where I smoked every day. But even now, like those triggers will still come up. Like I'll finish my meal, or I'll get in the car and put my seatbelt on, and I'll like reach for my lighter, and I haven't kept a lighter on me in 20 years. You know, so. It's one of those things that, you know, I think you have to, like you were saying, I think you have to get to the point where you're doing it. You have to make the conscious decision of
You have to have an epiphany.
Yeah.
I was 2 packs a day, and I was 24, and I was living on the 4th floor of a building. And one day I'm out of breath. And I had a moment of clarity. I'm 24 years old. I can't breathe. How can I become old? And the number old
Mm.
was 30 in my mind. I mean, like a neon sign. How can I become old? And I had been reading a book, which I recommend to anybody, by Dale Carnegie, called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And Dale Carnegie pitched, if you want to become stop worrying, train yourself to live in what he called day-tight compartments. And what I had done is I had stumbled into what works. What's permanent for an addict is you can't have the addiction. It rekindles. Maybe you're not really an addict. A real addict couldn't have one, but you can't have one if you're an addict. But you do it a day at a time. And I got up the next morning. I said, if I don't smoke today, I won't die. If I don't die, eventually it'll get easier, and it got easier. But it started with that. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. Body in motion tends to stay in motion. It costs more energy to get started. You need that moment. And maybe Mr. Weird's having that moment today where he's hearing this about it to think, maybe it's my time, something.
What you just said brought to mind. It was a video I probably saw on YouTube years ago now. Other people might have seen it. I didn't think much about it when I saw it. But it's something my mind goes back to quite a bit now, which is it was about a guy who lost a bunch of weight. He was like severely obese. And they were talking to him about how he lost the weight. And he said, well, one day I was like, I couldn't get around. I couldn't move. I really couldn't get out of my chair very much. And like, I was always out of breath. And he said, one thing I always wanted to be is I was always like really envious of people who were runners.
Hmm.
And he's like, I want to be a runner. And so one day he said, well, if I want to be a runner, what do I have to do? And he said, I have to run. So every day he went and started running. And he was like, I'm a runner. I run. And now he's like this big fitness guy, and he helps other people and all that stuff. But just that idea, because I don't know much about him, but just that idea I've talked about before of like, well, if you want to do something, then you have to do it. If you want to be a runner, then you have to run. If you want to be a writer, you have to write. If you want to be whatever it is, then you just have to go do it to become that thing. It's maybe oversimplifying it, but maybe not.
Well, in my deck, that's card number 37.
The U-turn.
that moment when you say enough is enough. In the recovery community, gets sick and tired of being sick and tired. You have to have that moment to get started. And his thing was, I want to be a runner. And that was like an epiphany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got to take action. If you don't take action, it just becomes a fantasy.
Yes.
But you took action.
Yeah.
This has been
well,
great,
excellent.
by the way.
Thank you. Having a blast. So I just want to remind people again, we have a few more minutes left in the show. So if you have a question for John, throw it in chat and we will make sure we get that answered for you. All the links are up at the top of YouTube and at the top of Twitch. And if you're listening later, we'll have that listed in the comment section down below. So you can check out all of the things that we've been talking about tonight.
I have a request.
Yes.
In my book, for each of my lives, I wrote a poem. It seemed like the lives wanted to speak more directly than prose. And I wrote a poem also at the end, collectively, called Our Autobiographies. If I could be indulged to read one of my poems, I'll give you guys a choice.
Yes.
Either my shaman poem, My Wife and Me, or Our Autobiographies.
Let's go with the collective one. We're all about some collective things here.
Okay, here we go. It's called Our Autobiographies. If the world is a stage and you and I are the cast, who watches the show? God? Our higher selves? Our souls? Or are these dramas simply stored on forgotten shelves, forever unread, forever unseen, perhaps not even by ourselves, unless old age finds us musing, yes, this was me. I lived an amazing dream, now coming to an end. Is that all there is? Tales told by myself, to myself, and no one? Nothing? Empty and meaningless, like a play performed in a theater where all the seats are empty. Did it even happen at all? Not even a dream, just a nothing for no one. Or you and I play a role in this great epic with the divine audience, in rapt attention to every twist and turn of our plots, a series of never-ending beginnings, each a step closer to transcendence, to the divine. Something at stake of far more significance than any lives, failures, success, grief, sadness, or joy. So I choose to believe, and ask you, dear reader, to join me in this magical quest to be not your mind or your body, but a soul witnessing divinity unfolding, infinite unfolding, becoming one with whatever creates this universe, the cosmic observer, universal creator, master storyteller, that which creates this before the beginning, past the end, always present, waiting to be found and then refound over and over, joyously rediscovering and rediscovered within. So that's how I end my little book.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and that thing about musing, you get to be a certain age and you look back on your life and you say, yeah, I really did that. I was a madman, and I worked in an insane asylum when I was in college, and I married a beautiful woman, went to school in Dublin, Ireland, and had children and all that stuff. Everybody's life has, as you said, I think earlier, every life is beautiful and has a theme attached to it. Each of us, and we're all part of this whole incredible story.
I would like to tell you a medium reading I did that was very significant to what we're talking about. And I don't know if it was just spirit showing me a visual for me to understand it, or if that's the way that it really is. But I was shown, the only way I can explain it is, it was like the river of time.
Ah,
And when we go back, all the experiences that we have get plopped into this river of time, and it all mingles together so that source can experience it. And it was so beautiful and amazing and magical that it just made me really realize that all of our lives, no matter how short or seemingly insignificant or whatever kind of stuff you want to tell yourself that it doesn't matter, it all mattered because it all went together. We were reporting back to source with all of our experiences, and it was amazing.
that is exactly what I was trying to say earlier when I talked about deity and how we're part of it yet separate.
Yeah.
These stories, the river of, together, like a symphony, each of us playing our note, an instrument, creating this incredible music.
And it's all one, it's all together.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean that life isn't a pain in the butt.
No, absolutely.
And I have heard people that do what I do. And if you decide, I mentioned earlier this thing about in Richmond, the Reincarnation Symposium.
I have written it down because I'm going to look it up.
If you hang with those people, you will hear people that talk about this in a bit of a different way. But the tapestry that each of us is a story is something that is prevalent amongst all of us.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of indigenous cultures that have the creation story of things being woven together. And I love that, that we're all the stories of our lives are a tapestry of things. It's like there's so many different kinds of metaphors we could go, but they're all important and beautiful.
And the thing about life being tough, I mentioned, is really and truly, the people that do this, Earth is a tough school. I've never had any experience of being incarnated anywhere else. Some of these people, if you decide to participate in this, have. But Earth is a tough school. And I can imagine somebody saying, you're going to incarnate on Earth?
Yeah.
You have no idea what goes on down there?
Are
It
you
is,
sure?
it is tough here. It is heavy. It is tough. There's pain. There's joy, but there's also a lot of adversity. A
Yeah.
lot of
Which
adversity.
I liked what you said about that at the beginning, that you can't learn if you don't have the things to push against.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And having this perspective does not mean you don't suffer. It
exactly.
doesn't mean like I've heard people think that people that believe in reincarnation think that they discount the importance of any particular life. Not at all. Not at all. Each life is filled with dreams, hopes, pains, fears. There's no escaping it. There really is no escaping it. You gotta go through it all. But the perspective, that's what I want to say. This perspective makes life seem lighter. You don't take yourself quite as seriously. If you've been the victim and the victimizer, I was an SS guy in Poland, and a victim, and an African slave brought to Georgia. I've been victim and victimizer. You've been male and female, rich and poor. Uh, you have a lightness. You get a lightness about life that isn't available if it's a pass fail thing. One life, one time. Do I go to heaven? Do I go to hell? That's not my perspective at all. This is all, like you said, the river, the tapestry, my little part of it.
Yeah.
And that's available to people if they do this work.
Yes.
Yeah, that was something that you kind of brought up there that we hadn't gotten into tonight, but for sure, because every past life that I've experienced has been completely different than the other one that I've had, and they've been from all different parts of the world.
Although Frosty has
I,
yet to see a
I've
female himself
yeah,
yet.
I've only seen male lives, but I've been in different continents.
Did you say
I
all
don't
female lives or no female
only
lives?
male so
Not
far.
experienced seeing one yet.
Yeah.
I
I've
know it's there though.
Yeah, I mean it has to be, but I've only done like 4, so it's
Yeah.
not like I've but so far they've all been male, and I know they're not all that way, but
I had a unique experience. I was at this training, and this fellow was saying, and I believe him, that he learned how to play the piano by accessing his life as an 18th century harpsichordist.
Ooh.
And he said he was the facilitator, trainer. He said, you want to go back and get some talent from the past. So I thought about leadership. As a hypnotist, you're kind of a leader, and I thought of leadership. And I found myself as a woman, and I'm a mother in Alexandria, ancient Alexandria. I've got 3 sons, and they're builders, and they're very successful. They build palaces, monuments. My boys, and I'm a father. I've got 3 children. Mother is different. I felt like they were part of me in a way that I had no access to as a male. And when one of them died in that experience, I was never the same after. It was like part of me had died.
Mhm.
But the leadership model of the female leadership is nurturing, supportive, instead of over the top boys. It's a different, kind of model. But that is available to understand, gender a little bit better. It's all just a perspective. It's all just a mask or a costume we wear. It's a line from Shakespeare. All the world's a stage. And
Yeah.
we have costumes, and there were set designers and all that.
I like that one too. Yeah.
well, we've pretty much reached the top of the hour here. So I guess we'll go ahead and do our false finish for all the people who are listening over in the different podcast lands out there over on iTunes and iHeartRadio and Spotify and a lot of different I get to go and go look at the analytics of like where people are listening and all kinds of different
All
ways
over the
that people are out
place.
there listening to us. We appreciate each and every one of you who are checking out each of our shows. We appreciate it so much. Thank you for listening to this one, and we will see you all next time. But for everyone else who is still hanging out here on Twitch, I wanted to say thank you, Reptar, for the raid. I hope you're
Yeah.
doing well, my friend, and welcome
Thank
in
you.
all of the raiders with Reptar.
And
Lovely to
Mr.
have you
Weir
guys in
gave
here.
us a bunch of bits earlier, 560 bits.
Yeah.
And he said it it was for skepticism.
And Keisha Mama reached a 25 stream streak.
Holy moly. And Keisha said she's got your books in her Amazon
Oh,
cart.
wonderful. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you for your comments and your question.
Yes, Keisha's awesome. All right.
All right, so let's
We
go
gotta go
see
find
who we
somebody to
can
raid.
raid over here on the Twitch Twitch tonight.
Scorpy's on doing tarot.
Yeah, Scorpy is on doing tarot. How about we go raid just Scorpy?
Let's do it.
All right, so real quick, I do want to say before we head out for tonight, join us next week. We're going to have Cheryl Costa here.
Yay!
She'll be back on the show. We're going to
So
talk
much
about
fun to talk to.
UAPs and witchcraft.
I want to
Because, you know,
talk
me,
to
I'm
her
always
about her short story book I read. So I got
there we go.
questions.
We got lots of stuff to talk about. We've come up with a happy medium. I said I want to talk. Last time I booked her to UAPs, and then when she found out that Jenny was a medium, she was like, "Screw that! I'm going to talk about let's talk about witchcraft." So when I invited her back this time, I said, "Let's do a half and half." So we're going to talk about all the weird stuff next Thursday with Cheryl Costa, same time, same place. So come check us out. And also, just to put out there, we have the witchinghourspodcast.com. So you can go there. You can check out any of the shows that are coming up. We're booked well into August, so you can see all the wonderful people that we have coming up to check out the show. And our merch store and everything you can get there from that page.
All right.
Just Scorpy. I think I have that typed in there, right? Boop, boop, boop.
You never know till you hit it.
I know, right? All right, there we go. Okay, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Take care, and we'll talk to you later.
Well, that was
And we